There are spoilers here. We are live. You're listening to Lisan Al Gaib. Yes, I am fluent in our language. Okay, I'm trying to figure out how to turn the camera around. I'm very Gen X here. I feel very Gen X. Okay, how do I turn the camera around, guys? Come on in, come on in. Let's talk Dune Part 2. If anybody can tell me how to change the camera around, I will. Oh, there I am.
What a
Hi, guys. Hi. Is there lighting here? Is there good lighting? It's very dark. Okay. Hi, guys. Okay. Teach.
yes.
3 hours of pure cinema. So first, before we get into Dune Part 2, we need to talk about Dune Part 1. Dune Part 1. How did we feel? Tej, you may speak first. And if you want to come on, just click the mic at the bottom and come on in. But Tej, talk to us. How did you feel?
I have, whether fairly or not, been branded as a Dune 1 hater on this app. I
Okay.
would not call myself a Dune 1 hater. I would call myself a Dune 1 truther.
Okay.
Um, there is some cool stuff in Dune. It looks great. Beautiful gowns. The box scene is really cool. The final fight set piece where they come and kill the dad and have the big fight with those explosions is one of the coolest things I've ever seen in the movie theater. But the rest of that film is an absolute sleeper. And in fact, the second time I watched Dune 1, it was because I couldn't sleep. I put Dune 1 on, and I'm not kidding. I was asleep in 14 minutes. I fell asleep within 14 minutes. It is great to make you fall asleep.
First of
But
all,
it's not bad. I have it. I think I gave it 3.5 stars on Letterboxd. So I don't hate Dune One. I just am very honest with my criticisms of Dune One. It is a very, very boring film.
okay. I see a couple more speakers up, and I'm going to say my piece in response to that and everything regarding Dune 1. But I see a couple. Legend Durham, go ahead and let me know. Did you watch Dune Part 1, and how did you feel about it? Give me a brief synopsis of your feelings about it.
So I would probably say that initially, I probably shared teasers um, sentiments on it when I first watched it, and you gotta remember that that was a weird time for us. You know, that was in the middle of quarantine. That was middle COVID. Movies were dropping on Max left and right, so it was just a weird time for us.
Right.
Weird moment. So I do agree that in a movie like that, in a time like that,
Hmm.
if you blink, it's easily to confuse some stuff. It's easy to miss some things, so on and so forth. I did watch it. I
But
watched
did
it
you
several
enjoy
times.
it though?
I enjoyed it then, and I enjoy it even more now because I realized that there are some things that I did not fall asleep on, like
Right.
Tej, and that I realize that is pertinent to understanding to what's happening in Dune 2. So
Okay. Perfect. Thank you for saying that. Bruce, I saw you come on right on up. Let me know what's going on.
Okay, I feel like you're going to be disappointed in me because I have not yet seen Dune 2. I'm
You
going to
haven't
No,
listen.
seen
tell
Dune
us
Part
about
1?
Dune One.
Okay, I did see one. I enjoyed it, and I'm going to rewatch it.
Okay.
I'm going to rewatch it before I see Dune 2 this weekend.
Okay.
Um, I didn't fall asleep on anything. Did I?
Excellent.
Am I misremembering? Was it not in theaters?
It was.
It was.
No, I saw it in the theater.
It was
Yeah.
like right after. It was basically the first big movie, like that people actually went to the movie theater to go see, other than like Top Gun. It was one of the first big ones that we actually got
Yeah.
like after the pandemic.
No, I went and saw, and I enjoyed it then, and I imagine that I'll enjoy it again when I watch it this weekend before I go see Dune 2. Um, I think that by doing so, I'm probably going to be able to enjoy Dune 2 a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I think that, capitalism is the beast that it is. And anytime
Always
that
will be.
they, what's that?
Always will be.
Oh yeah. Anytime that they
In our
release like a sequel or something, they always make the first one or two even harder to watch. But I really appreciate that that is not happening right now. That you still have like access to go see the first Dune, and with movies being as long as these movies are, I think that it does them justice to allow us to still watch, Dune 1 until we see Dune 2. So, like, I'd really encourage anyone who's thinking about going to see Dune 2 to just go ahead and give it a rewatch, the first one, so that you don't miss anything, because I really hate when I watch a movie and then I come back to like the timeline or something, or to like one of these spaces, and people are like, well, do you remember this part? And that one, well,
right.
that's a callback to this. And I'm like, oh man, I did not even put that together because it's been so long. So yeah, I'm
Love
excited.
that. Love that. David, how did you feel? Part one.
I'm not particularly a fan. Doing the first one was mediocre, and I was hoping maybe the second one was going to grab me, but it didn't do much either. But I have a lot of issues with Villeneuve, especially as he's
Mm.
gotten into the blockbuster realm. I feel like he's Dollar Tree Nolan.
Uh oh. Uh
I
oh.
Yeah,
Will
I
we watch
don't really.
book that, please? Dollar Tree Nolan. The 99-cent store Nolan. My God.
But no,
Okay.
I think a lot of it has to do with how when he just said it, it kind of clicked for me when he put out that blurb that he doesn't like dialogue, and I think that really hits because I think one of a couple of other reasons that I view him like that as compared to Nolan is that Nolan's work a lot of times involves a kind of um, cohabitive relationship between what is being said and what he's showing you image wise. Image wise, they're both on the same level. I do think they're incredible visionaries, but what undercuts and what serves Nolan is so much of those juicy tidbits of
Right.
dialogue that come together and form an entire idea where I feel like just as much as his image can be abstract, he deals in abstractions, and in this particular story, in particular, which we'll go into later about as far as Dune 2, I feel as those abstractions hurt the film in a number of ways.
So, thank you. If anybody else wants to come up, let me know how they felt about Doom Part 1. I feel you. So, let me tell you how I felt. Number one, this is what we watch. This is not a safe space. Okay? I did not create a safe space, I created an honest space. And it's only safe to be honest. It doesn't mean you won't get checked, doesn't mean, we won't have these conversations and disagree because I love it here. Um, Dennis is a Canadian filmmaker. So we already know US and Canada, we've already got our differences and things like that. And it's obviously extremely evident in a lot of this stuff. I enjoyed Dune Part 1. It's not my favorite movie. I'm not like, oh my gosh, best movie ever, go see it again. Which, if that's the barometer, if that's how we judge films, then sure, I can see why you don't want to exalt it in a way. I think what Dune Part 1 did incorrectly was the marketing. If you tell me that there's going to be this movie star and there's these things that I'm going to get, and I don't get it, you're immediately overselling and under delivering. And I think if we just would have gone across a different way, because what did so many people say after this movie came out? Oh, well, it's a trilogy and we're da 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 and we're going to get this and really this. But we're like, why did we barely get Zendaya? Why? Um, what the fuck is this about? Because again, guys, if you're new here, Dune is based on a literal set of novels, right? Or one novel, I don't remember. Um, and that is where Dennis gets his. And it was so funny when when that recent quote about Dennis came out. He was like, "I don't need too much dialogue." Well, of course, you took a book where it was already a bunch of writing, and you were like, "We don't need all of this. We just need to make a movie." And I think that ended up being where so much of it was lost. But man, that was a beautiful movie, and man, it looked so good. It just looked so good, and it was exciting. And Dennis really gets me when it comes to sound and when it comes to cinematography and visualization. I'm absolutely obsessed with Sicario. Okay. I love Sicario. Best thing ever. Sicario is absolutely the best. I will watch that movie 100 times over. I've watched it at least 30 times. I love Sicario. If I'm in a film, okay, the soundtrack, it's called The Beast, and it's by Johan Goransson. Please, don't quote me on the spelling. If I'm in a movie, my intro to my movie will be my intro into that film. The introduction of my character will be The Beast by Johan Goransson. Like I don't want to have any other conversations. That is so fucking fire. Emily Blunt did her thing. Even fucking Daniel Kaluuya did his thing. But I'm getting far off. What I'm trying to say, Dune Part One was advertised and came in a way that we were all expecting what we got from Dune Part Two, and it was just we were misled. We were misled. And it was a lot of here's the book in movie form. And if I didn't read the book, then I don't really care. This just is really boring. If I did read the book, maybe I'm like, oh my gosh, this is exciting. What you know about the Bene Gesserit and stuff. And so I think because I didn't read the book, I understood that. But also I knew that this was a trilogy. But again, you can't fall on the crutch of a trilogy because take off your mic right now and name a trilogy. The first one was fire. Okay? So it's like I can't give you the crutch of, oh, well, it's a trilogy, so yes, you got to pass on the first one because you really don't. Because, I'm going to quote David. Christopher Nolan made a trilogy, and that first one was fire. Okay, we all know what I'm talking about. So that's how I feel about Dune Part One. Essentially, I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it as a film. Again, in the hierarchy of like changing my life, repeat watching, I'm watching it again only to really refresh my memory on Dune Part Two, which I've already watched. So I'm going to watch Dune Part One again and Dune Part Two. But guys, that's 6 hours of my life. I live a very, very busy, fulfilling life. That's 6 hours of my life. You're gonna have to give me some time because I have to talk with y'all about it as well. Bruce, I see your hand up. Let's get into it because now we're gonna talk about Dune 2. Oh, I loved it.
Ah,
But go ahead, Bruce, because I know you haven't seen it.
I'm sorry, because you had challenged me to name a trilogy where the first one is fire and John Wick is right
John Wick
there.
is right
Just
there.
saying.
John Wick is right there. So I'm with you. And Christopher Nolan is right there. And give me another trilogy. Teach, give me another trilogy.
The Nolan trilogy is not my favorite, just because I think the first one is the weakest one. But I think it's not that I think Dune One is weak. It's that I think Dune One is quite literally a setup movie for the movie that we were promised. Like you said,
What's
that
wrong with the setup movie though? There's,
everything. Well,
there's nothing wrong with the setup movie.
if it only serves the purpose of setting up the next film, there's something wrong with it. If you're having a good time, it doesn't matter whether it's a setup movie or not. But I have to have a good time. And Dune One, Dune Two solved so many of the issues I had with Dune One. It's crazy. Like every issue I had with Dune One was addressed in Dune Two because it felt like to me Dune Two was the movie that he really wanted to make. This is the movie that we were supposed
But you
to.
might say that, and Dune 3 might be the movie you really want to make.
Maybe Dune Two is real cinema, and it just if anything, Dune Two frustrated me more because we had the capability of having a movie that was a real blockbuster with real set pieces, and for a director that claims that he hates dialogue, what is Dune One? Dune One is one big set piece, one fight scene, and and a whole bunch of dialogues. Like it's literally all dialogue. The whole movie is just dialogue and landscapes. That's all the movie is.
I love a good landscape. Give me the millimeters, give me the landscape. I love it. But I hear you, and I want to make a kind of like through point here for what you're talking about too. When we talk about dialogue, Chocolat, welcome to the stage. Chocolatey Socrates, welcome to the stage. How are you feeling? What do we want to say?
I'm just responding to, hey everybody, I'm responding to that last speaker. I'll be honest with you, Dune 2 is now in my number one or two. I'm like fighting with the Nolan film back and forth for movies.
Okay.
When I first saw Dune 1, it was a friend's, night. I had a bunch of friends over because they released when everything was dropping on HBO Max, if I remember right.
Right.
And we sat there, and I'm a big sci-fi fan, Interstellar, All-Star, all that type of stuff. We sat there for about 30 minutes, and I was like, are you guys, we had some wine in us. I'm like, are you guys lost as I am? They
Right.
all said yes. We put on Hereditary. And I freaked them out with that. They had never seen it. I went back and watched that
You
movie, and now
can't
I've
just
watched.
you can't just give Hereditary to people without the
Well,
movie.
yeah, I gave it to him, but
You
I ended
can't
up
just
watching that
give
movie
it.
5 or 6 times. Dune One. I actually went and read the book afterwards. I was so intrigued, and I
Mm-hmm.
think it is so daring that this is supposed to be the hook. Like, I want to get people into this series so they do come back for Dune 2, and it still did amazing.
Here's the
It was,
thing.
yeah.
I'm glad you said it because I enjoyed it, but I think like you kind of touched on the point. KP, I see your hand up. Thank you for waiting. You kind of touched on the point itself. It's almost like, okay, but why were people tapped in for Dune 2? It's this is a business, right? People were tapped into Dune 2 because it's Timothy and Zendaya, not because I'm obsessed with Dune 1, right? And it's Timothy, it's Zendaya, it's, I mean, it's Dennis. Like, let's pause real quick, KP, before you speak, and let's talk about Dennis's filmography, because David has already told us how he felt. Tej, I want to hear from you, Bruce, KP, everybody. Here's Legend Durham. I want to hear what you guys are thinking. I see another new speaker as well, Squid Win. So we got Dune Part 1, 2, and 3, obviously. We've got Blade Runner 2049. Okay, we've got Sicario. I've already told you guys. Hearts. We've got Arrival, which was really unique, I should say. And we've got Prisoners, which is the wildest motherfucking movie. Okay. And there's obviously a few more, but this is Dennis's, like, I don't want to say pantheon, but like, this is what he does. So, in general, when we're talking about Dune, Dennis is going to make a movie. Now, is it going to be the best movie that you've ever seen? And like, kind of, but he's going to make a movie. And when we get Blade Runner, we understand that like he's able to create universes on screen, which is good, which is what Dune needed. But it's really, this is the business aspect of it, where movie stars come in and sell your shit for you. So, KP, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. I guess I want to answer your previous question because I was thinking about Back to the Future, Bad Boys, and Die Hard. Um, I think I'm a Dune novice. I didn't read the books. I will never read the books. And that's fine. I think the theater experience was missed in Dune 1 because I like Dune 1. I watch it on my big screen at home. I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. It's
Right.
nothing legendary. It's not legendary. It's nothing earth shattering. Um, but I went to see Dune 2 because I like Dune 1. But I went to go see it in a theater in 4DX. And that's the way it's a theater experience that's missed when you're watching a movie that's made for the theater. And a movie that's made for the theater but released at home is different. It may make you feel, because you got too much to do. You can just turn it off. In a movie theater, you can't turn it off or you lose the money. Or you gotta, the movie theater usually isn't around the corner from your house. So you gotta take time to go. So it's an investment.
Right.
Watching a movie theater at home, you lose some of that. But say that Dune 2 is maybe one of the greatest sequels I've ever seen. For me, it's not the best ever, but I haven't seen many that are better than this. And I'm just talking about that I haven't read the books. I don't know the backstory. I don't know the lore. I don't know who's who and who's what. Just following along with the story, it made a real impact on me in a cinema way. Like I was like, oh, this is why I came back to the movie theaters after the
Right.
pandemic was over. So yeah, it was great.
Okay, I love that. I love that. Edwin, I see your Squidwin. I see your hand up.
Evening. To answer your first one of the earlier questions about fire first movies in the trilogy, Lord of the Rings is definitely one of them. The Fellowship, that's definitely really one of the best ones. And to answer your question about Villeneuve, he's definitely alongside Nolan. He's like one of those directors that's like you can have like my money for life. Like whatever film you have, like it's like I'm gonna be there no matter what. So with Dune Part One is like he's just setting up everything with the story, but the only thing is like you're right, like it was horribly marketed because when you get to your seat and then that has the Harkonnen voice of the dreams are messages from the deep, and then you see the Warner Brothers logo, and then you see Dune, and then you see the top in small font Part One, and I'm like, oh, so we're not. This is just we're getting a Part One. So it's like, so are we? Where are we going to end? So, and I never read the books, and so that is like really sets up. But you see, like it's really amazing from the production design and to like how so it's so grand but so minimal in terms of like it's just like there's nothing like gold or everything. It's just like so much space, but it's like you can see like they put detail in like the background and like the lighting and the costuming, and it's just like with Dune Part Two, it just felt like in a culmination of like everything Villeneuve has done in his career. In terms of like Sicario, it's like so cynical in terms of like weapon, like because it's about like the America's drug war, but it's like we're doing it in like the most terrible way, and we're just seeing it happen, like and like Josh Brolin, he's essentially playing the same character in Sicario, and in this film too. So it just be like we're like you have to go to war, you have to go to war, and then with Arrival, it's just like how human connection is, and like dealing with like a different life outside. And Blade 2049 is like the same set design, the same production design, in like terms of how grand and so minimal it is. So with Villeneuve, like I can understand like why people like don't ride with Nolan or Villeneuve, but it's just like those guys is like we're not gonna you're gonna get your money's worth, and I had my money's worth on Leap Day. So yeah, that's all I'll say for now.
Mo, you're muted.
Thank you. First of all, let me apologize because I'm being corrected already on the pronunciation of names. My bad. Okay. It's an honest mistake. Okay. His name is Denny, not Dennis. All right. It's spelled Dennis. Okay. But clearly it's Denis Villeneuve. Okay. So let me be right, because I do. I mean, is it Zendaya or Zendaya? Right? Is it Timothy or is it Tim? Like, okay, but Tej corrected me, so thank you, Tej. It's Denis, correct? How did you know this? I don't
Yes,
know.
you got it.
So it's Denis Villeneuve. So whatever. So I learned today, so I'm imparting my knowledge with you guys. But let's get into Dune Part Two. Okay. I see there's only like a couple of people that haven't really seen it, and so spoilers, and they're going to be amazing spoilers. Honestly, I'm very excited for everyone to watch it. I had an amazing time. I think I'm always like hesitant to kind of understand what people will do with source material, and will inevitably get the nerds that are like, I read the books, right? I got to be that for like a lot of other films and franchises, okay? So I don't like dislike you guys, but like we get it, okay? We get it. You read the books, okay? We understand. But I think what I really enjoyed about this film was that we waited no time on the action. And for some reason, Dune, to me, I hear Dune and I'm like, I want action. We're in this ecosystem, we're on this different planet, we've created these different languages, and there's still the kind of elements of humanity and hierarchy of power and spice, right? and resources, and do we have access to sun and water? And so this is like a really cool world to create. I want to see people die. And it's crazy. But I want to see people get got, and I want to see people get their revenge, and I want to see it happen, right? And that's why we're here. We want to see like why you would actually honor a god, Lisan al Gaib, right? Muad'Dib, which is so cool. Why do you honor him? Is he really that nigga? Is he really him? Like, how do we know that? And so we really got a lot of that. We even got the origin of Dune, which is the name of the planet. When it was like, he's like, 12, when you were 12 and you're da 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 da, and when the Fremen was this, and they called this planet Dune. And I was like, oh my God, that's where we got Dune. Again, I didn't read the source material, so I didn't know that, guys. But I think that was just so exciting. And it's one thing, and those of you, some of you in the audience know, my my threshold and my expectations and standards for a really good fight scene are high. And we can talk about it. I'm gonna let you go next, Tej. I'm gonna see a couple hands up. We can talk about it. My expectations for fight scenes are extremely high. And I'm talking the raid. I'm talking raid 2. I'm talking a little John Wick. I can't believe I'm giving John Wick, but that video game fight scene in John Wick 4 went crazy. I'm talking even I'm talking Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. Okay? I'm really not going to name too many Hollywood movies, really honest. I'm not going to name too many American films, honestly. My standard for fighting scenes goes crazy. Okay? And y'all are welcome to add in stuff there. But tell me why you love Dune Part 2, TJ. And then we'll go to Legend Durham and then David.
Dune 2 is literally like when you think of a blockbuster, there are certain things, certain boxes you have to check. You
Okay.
got your movie stars, check. You got your big set pieces, check. You got your, movie star making roles, check. You're gonna see something you've never quite seen before done on screen, check. Like this movie checks all the boxes for what a blockbuster is. This, I mean, I love Denis. I think Denis is great. My criticisms of Dune One notwithstanding, I really like Denis. I love his style. I love his eye, and we already knew that the world that he built was very cool and very deep. Although, obviously, what I said about the first film is that it's boring. It was clear that he put a lot of effort into what this world was, so that this setup for this movie. And kind of from the beginning, it just kind of hits the ground running. And that's something that you can't really do if you don't have a first movie. So it's not like I don't want Dune 1 to exist. But the good thing about having Dune 1 is that Dune 2 hits the ground running immediately. You're already thrown into the action. You already know who the characters are, and we can start showing you cool shit from minute 2, minute 3 of the movie. And it just kind
Can
of never
I
lets up.
enjoy Dune Part 2 without Dune Part 1?
I think you could watch like a really long recap video. I did rewatch Dune for this movie, but if you watch like a new Rockstar's 30 minute, 35-minute video about what happened in Dune 1, you're going to have all the information that you need.
Do I need Dune Part 1 at all to really
No, you
feel
really
Dune
don't.
Part 2?
There'll be stuff that you miss and little stuff that you miss, but the overall story, you're gonna understand the story pretty immediately without having watched Dune One, in my opinion. As somebody who hasn't read the books and someone who's not really deep into the lore, it does a really good job of kind of planting you in the world and showing you at least like who's against who. Why are we against who? These are the bad guys, and here's why they're the bad guys.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think that one thing that Dune 2 does really well that Dune 1 just doesn't do, or at least doesn't do successfully, in my opinion, is that not everybody in Dune 2 is giving the same performance. What Zendaya is doing and what Chalamet are doing are so different. Not just who the characters are, but their actual performances are different. What Stilgar is able to get on the screen as the scariest person who's ever played a villain in No Country for Old Men, he is like comic relief, and to see him in that role is something that he's one very good at, but also two, you need that kind of diversity of experience and that diversity of uh, a performance in a movie that long, especially to make it interesting. And I think outside of Momoa just randomly coming in and making a couple fart jokes in Dune One, everybody is so serious all the time, and it's grating. It's a 2.5 hour movie where everybody's having the worst possible time possible. Like there's no fun in Dune 1. Dune 2, there's so much fun happening. You
So
see
much.
him ride a worm. I don't care what you think about the movie. You see him ride that worm and you don't feel anything, like you have no feelings inside. How
Right.
can you not feel something when he rides a worm? Like there's so many shots in this movie, the fight sequences with him and Zendaya where they like are trying to take down the spice bomber things, and they have to hide underneath the like legs of the aircraft, and they like have to hide there. They're fighting. The way that stuff is filmed, those set pieces are just incredible. I am not a big Chalamet fan, but I absolutely love his performance. I think Rebecca Ferguson's performance is pretty special. I think Zendaya is giving the best performance, and the interplay between our main character doesn't think that he's the Messiah, and at some point, spoiler alert, he starts to lean into it. But you still have Zendaya, who's
This
still
movie.
never quite on board with that. That stuff is that's really good stuff. Like that
This is real romance.
that's not just the romance part of it, but also like it's the romance, despite the fact that what he stands for or who he's presented as to her people, she's against. And so you have that dissonance there that really pays off once you get to the end of the movie, where you realize that maybe our Lisan El Gaib is not actually the hero, and he sets it up perfectly for you to come to that conclusion on your own, knowing that not everybody in the same theater watching the same movie will come to that same that same place of where what they think of that character. He lets you kind of decide on your own. What do you think of this character? Do you think that he's actually the hero? And I think that's really smart and really a deep understanding of the source material. And I absolutely love Dune 2. I thought it was great. And I want to apologize for my Dune 1 slander,
You
Hussein, but I
should.
will say, watching Dune 1, after watching Dune 2, watching Dune 1, despite its flaws, was absolutely a worthwhile thing to do just because I got to watch Dune 2. It was great.
I think it's a really good apology. That's a good formulated, formatted apology. Here's the thing:
Appreciate it.
we're not gonna skim over. Oh, hey, Hussein. We're not gonna skim over my romance comment. This is a what we watch space. This is a what we watch pillar. Y'all know what's up. Okay. Every film is a romance. Now there was one recently that challenged that, and we won't discuss it again. It is what it is. This movie ended with a scene with Zendaya leaving her man. Okay, her man that she fell in love with. That's her man. Her man is the Messiah, the Lisan Al Gaib, the Muad'Dib Usul. Okay, and the end of the movie was the betrayal, the deceit, the feeling used, and not like a part of this community and this kingdom or whatever you want to call that was being created under her man, my man, my man, my man. Every film is a romance. And part of why that works so much is because we're getting the Lisan Al Gaib, and we're getting this like beautiful story about sacrifice and about this tension between his mother and the Bene Gesserit kind of running everything, being like fucking ventriloquists and puppeteers, but really like what is their motives? And so I just really enjoy that we can make an action packed, like terroristic, universal, like cosmos, like story and still center love. But like, what does that love actually look like? Like, have you ever really like been in love with the Lisan Al Gaib? Like, you don't even understand. And then not only that, but you are as a woman, Zendaya and what's her name, Chani. She likes to be called Chani. Chani, right? It's Chani. It's not Johnny. Chani.
Yes, you got it right.
Chani. Chani is like, I'm actually that bitch. Like, I have been raised in the desert. You're new here. So, yes, my man, my man, my man, but like, be cool because the king is nothing without his queen. But then what does he do at the end? And we'll get there. But Durham, go ahead.
That's some good stuff, by the way. I kind of want to take it back just a bit there to you guys. I want to touch on something that you guys said about Denis and dialogue, and then I want to finish off with my point on Doom 2. But uh, I just want to be clear with what Denis said, about not liking dialogue. And so I want us to be clear with what a filmmaker is saying and sharing his likes and dislikes and what he actually literally shares with us. Sicario won an Oscar for that screenplay, written by Taylor Sheridan. Uh, Seriously and insanely and magnificent at it. And so uh, his other Denis films like Blade Runner, Arrival, Dune One, again, even Sicario, all had exceptional visuals. But I do think Denny and Frazier decided to put everything on the table from the first scene to the actual duel in Dune 2. I think T said that earlier, that they feel like pretty much everything that we were looking for, top to bottom, was placed in this film, and which brings me to my point of the film. I was having a great time watching Dune 2. Man,
It's a
this is a
great
great
time.
action film. I was having a great time, man. It was like, oh man,
Great.
I started to actually consume an edible first, and I'm glad I didn't. I'm glad I didn't because, and I may have to revisit it with the edible because that third act was insanely dark. It goes from sci-fi act to me. This movie goes from sci-fi action to sci-fi horror, just that fast. With that third act,
Why do you
with
say that? Because I love that, and you're
with
right. But
you.
why do you say that?
Well, when you realize first, this young man has been saying the whole movie, I can't head south. If I head south, a billion,
Right.
63 billion people
Gonna die.
He said I can't head north.
they
Can't head
We'll
north.
starve.
yeah, okay. And so they're gonna die. 63, and that's to start. 63 billion people to starve to death. And it's because of me. They're screaming out my name. I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. But you know what? Eventually, I gotta do it.
Right.
And you just see that the way the Bene Gesserit just, like you said, puppeteering everything, even at the hands of his own at, at, of his own mother. After he, spoiler alert, after he drinks, the water of
Life.
life,
Hmm.
and he comes back to life, and he turns around and he stares. I never forget that look that he gives his, like when we watch this movie again and again, you'll see so much stuff you miss when he looks at his mother, the way he looks at her, because he just consumed like centuries of knowledge while he was under. So he realizes who his bloodline is, who her father is, what's going on, everything. And so it's at that moment he realizes that yes, I have to go where I said I didn't want to go.
And
And
if
yeah,
I'm
go ahead. No, go
engaged
ahead.
with
Yeah,
you,
go ahead.
it's dark
Yeah,
because, like you and Tej were saying, we started off with I'm a romantic man. I just want my people, right? Like, remember the conversation that Chani had with her fellow Fremen? He's good. He's noble. He's this. He's that. And I fuck with what you're saying because we get to the point in the third act where it is really dark because we're not sure how to feel about the Lisan Al Gaib, but we're turned up because we know that he's him and what he just did to become a Fremen and to become this, Messiah and to be this like, you
right.
know, I don't know anything you can think of at the height of your, what's the term? Like your universal kind of religious presence, and it's like, but whoa, you really like in order to be a king, in order to run things, you have to do really fucked up shit. And it kind of just goes with that kind
Right.
of understanding. Like you don't get to the top without being a little fucked up or maybe very fucked up. And so I agree with you. That third act was very dark.
Is
And it started when he sat up there after consuming all of that knowledge
uh-huh.
and drinking the water of life
Right.
after being like manipulated by his own
Yeah.
mother.
Yep.
And like it's just all this stuff. And then you get this moment where he's like he basically just gets up and does the Kanye West mic drop. And we're like,
Absolutely.
whoa, I thought you were this humble noble as written, right? Which is hilarious. We can't go without talking about as written. As written, he doesn't want you to believe he's the Messiah. So he doesn't want you to believe he's, oh my gosh, he's named himself the kangaroo mouse.
Right.
But no, the mouse creates his own water. So it's like, it gets really dark because it's like, oh, no,
And
you're willing to let people die.
and
Oh, okay.
the reason why and I lean into it so heavy is because, and one thing that Tej mentioned was that when you ask Teach, do we need to watch Dune 1 in order to enjoy or watch Dune 2?
Right.
Teach said no, so on and so forth. But here's the thing.
Mhm.
In this recap video that Teach mentioned, we cannot see how close that boy was to his father in that recap video. Now look, this is why we got film snobs on Twitter trying to tell people how to interpret that third act. Everybody wanted Paul Atreides to have vengeance for his father because his father didn't just get murdered or assassinated. He had that man naked, butt naked at the table. They was playing with him, just disrespect, you know. So we
Right.
wanted Paul Atreides to have revenge and vengeance for his father. That's what we're looking for. But when he sat up there and he finally moved towards a direction that spelled the end of humanity, all in the name of his father, that's when things got really dark. Like, whoa, we want you to have vengeance, but man, what the hell am I sitting here watching, man? Like, so that's when it turned for me. Like this, and T just said it. This is some good stuff here, man. This is some insanely well crafted cinema here, man. I
This
don't
is
think
real cinema, and
people are
I
really
want to
tapping
give
into the.
I want to give a
Go ahead.
couple other people a
Yep.
chance to speak, but you've been spitting. Hussein, welcome to the stage.
Evening, good evening, good evening.
Did you watch Dune 2?
That was me. I just clicked mute by mistake, but that was probably a Freudian slip because Hussein started talking. Excuse me.
No,
He's just clearly a hater of yours.
of course, as a hater. No, I watched it 70 millimeter IMAX, and I think I died and came back to life.
Okay,
Um,
period.
no, yeah. First, I want to start by saying I appreciate the apology, Tish. Um, it was warranted, the apology, but I think no, the film itself is just an artifact. Like, how do I put it? Okay, let me start by saying that Denise, is that how we say it?
Denis. Denis.
Denny.
Denis.
The way that he does his films is by exposing relationships. If you look at all of his films, it starts with the relationships between characters,
Because
and
he
I think
enjoys
that's
them.
why Dune One is so important. Is it's establishing all of those relationships, and if you don't have that initial film, no matter how like quote unquote boring it might seem, it's cinema. If you
You
don't have the
know,
relationships, then
you
the
know
second movie doesn't make sense,
who thinks Dune 1 is boring? People that don't get bitches.
right? You
Because you don't
need
Unfortunately,
understand building
unfortunately, I don't be
relationships.
getting no bitches, but that's true. I do find it boring.
I mean, hey, I
you
didn't say
get
this was a safe space. If you don't get no bitches, I understand. You didn't like Dune Part 1. I get it. Go ahead,
what
Hussein. You just made me realize that. Me and you
what
get it.
is
We get it.
what is love without relationships, right? So
What does
you don't
any of
get
this mean without our
it
relationship?
means nothing. And
Nothing.
so that's why Dune One is so important because you get the relationship between him and his father, you get the relationship between him and his mother, why he fights so hard. You get the relationship between him and the Fremen. You get the relationship between the Fremen and themselves. You get the relationship between him and the Harkonnens. All of these are important artifacts that help us understand why Dune 2 is so amazing. And without all of those relationships established, we're kind of just in like a beautiful action film, but it
Which,
doesn't mean anything really.
which I love a beautiful action film.
We all love a beautiful action film. Terminator 2 is a beautiful action film. It doesn't mean
Talk
anything.
about it. Period.
Don't let
That's one
he's
of my.
gonna slander T2. Don't let him. Don't let him do
That's
that.
literally one of my favorite movies. This is not a safe space to slander that film.
No, I'll
Okay,
ease up.
that
But
that film. Okay. Here's the
yeah,
thing. Go ahead, because I love what you're saying. Go ahead.
so like we were talking about the third act. I forget.
Hmm.
Temporal. I think it was talking about the third act of the film,
Hmm.
and I think that like broke me inside watching Chani realize what the love of her life is actually doing.
Right.
And you can see him setting it up even before they even get to the final fight scene. Try not to do spoilers, but the way that she carries the like second half of the film.
Oh my God,
Not
right?
that not that like anyone else's level of performance fell off, but like incredible. She's probably going to get Best Supporting Actress or whatever next year.
Fully agree. Needs to be.
Um,
Phenomenal.
but when she was still standing at the end, when everyone did what they did, I'm trying not to do spoilers, but when everybody knelt and she's just there staring, heartbroken, I was just like,
Here's the thing. You
is
have to
relationships, right?
you have to understand we're in the desert, meaning most of our bodies are covered. We've got these like advanced mechanisms that suck water out of our bodies and put it back into these wells and things. And so essentially everything is covered from like here down. And as an artist, as an actor, as a creator of these universes on screen, you have to act with just this.
Right.
And Zendaya did that the entire movie
And
with
killed it.
and and it was just like you guys don't understand, and I'm not you guys do, but those of you that may not be tapped into what we watch all the time, like this is an art form, okay? Every part of filmmaking, including the acting, is a beautiful skill set and art form that not everybody can do, okay? And if all you can see is this part of me and then the movements of my body as a human, and you know exactly what I'm feeling in those moments when I'm in love versus when I'm angry at my partner versus when I want to kill motherfuckers for playing with my people in my city and my spaces or whatever. Like that's real acting. And Becca Ferguson and Zendaya just absolutely blew my mind. I'm like,
Amazing.
people in real life low key can't even express themselves in a real way that where you can really engage. They have to use words. Zendaya was doing all of this and raising her brows and just just piercing her eyes, widening them, and just it was just like, baby, that's acting. But go ahead.
And that's kind of to the point about what uh, Denny was saying about too much dialogue, right? Like, of course, dialogue is important, but I think what he was really trying to say with having too much dialogue was that in television you need that. You only have so much time per episode in order to do what you need to do. But in film, you have more space literally on the screen. You have more time, and you're able to like utilize the medium in order to say so many things without having to say anything at all. And that's the type of performance that he's able to draw out of his actors without needing them to say too much. That's the power of the director
I
in
like
order
the
to
way you
draw
said
that out.
it. He respectfully should have said it like that. And he didn't say anything wrong because we get very excited, especially on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, and we don't really read the words that are on the page, and we just kind of get excited and just kind of apply our own interpretations based on our own experiences and opinions. Tej, I want to let you speak too, or anybody else upstage. Nem,
Thanks
I
for the
see
time.
you in there. Come on in. Thank you, Hussein. You spitting right now. I don't know what you was about to say about Terminator 2, but I'm gonna pretend you wasn't gonna say nothing
I'll
crazy.
ease up.
Tej, do you want to say anything in regards to any of that?
I just want to say that my lease on El Gaib would never, ever, ever disrespect a black woman in the way that this white man did. Uh, but no, I agree with a lot of what he said, and I do take the point that the reason why Dune One matters is because these relationships matter. I get that, but that watching a relationship drama on screen when you walk into a blockbuster action movie is not quite like that. Doesn't make it fun,
Okay, but
even
you
if it's
liked
necessary.
Oppenheimer. No, but you liked Oppenheimer.
Oppenheimer, I knew I was walking into a 3 hour dialogue driven procedural. I knew what I was getting.
See, it was a marketing issue. I told you guys it was a marketing issue. Because if they told you Dune was that, you would have thought that Dune was better than
If
Oppenheimer.
they told me
I
Doom
stand
was
by
that, respectfully, I would have watched it at home and said, "This is beautiful" on my television,
it. Here's
and
the thing.
went to the theater for Dune 2.
I'll be the first to tell you that Dune Part 1 does not work in any other place but theaters. It's a very hard movie to finish. We're just sitting there with a bunch of expose and exposition. And I love that personally. But let's stop talking around it. We have to have this conversation. It's been burning inside of me, guys. I feel like no one knows what dialogue means anymore. I mean, every single film has dialogue. Otherwise, it's a silent film. So let's just start there. Okay. If you don't like dialogue, then make silent films, and you don't want to do that. There's two things that have been said this week that I have a real issue with. Tej, I briefly spoke to you about it, and I think I spoke to a couple other people about this in this space, or that came in and out of the space. First, we had the Shogun producer tell us that there's the plus sign. The better comparison to that show is Succession and House of Cards and not Game of Thrones. I don't want to hear it. Then we have Denis, who's like, oh, dialogue is for television, not film. So, we just don't need it. And to me, hey, Denis, I don't think you're wrong. I just don't understand the point of saying that. Here's why. I think everyone's really confused. If you're great at dialogue, it works 100% of the time. 100% of the time. The only time dialogue doesn't work is if it doesn't work. You know what I mean? Like, the only time someone walks away from a movie and was like, why the fuck did that character say that? Is because we're trying to figure out why the fuck the character said it. Not because we never really walk away, and please tell me if you do. You guys watch movies as much as I do. Please tell me if you really walk away from a movie saying, oh, they didn't have to say that. I think it was a fabulous line, but they didn't have to say it. We could have done without that. You know what that movie could have used less stuff? Dialogue. We never say that unless the dialogue was poor. So to me, it's like, I hear you, but great dialogue is always a plus. It always works. We all use our words every day. Great writing includes great dialogue or monologues or any kind of huffing and puffing or whatever. And so I hear you, Denis. Yes, you want to focus on the visuals, but I think we're even selling him short because we don't talk enough about the sound design. One thing that director is going to do is he's going to have a fantastic soundtrack, a fantastic score, and he is going to make you feel in those moments with that sound. So we got the visuals plus the sound. These movies don't work with no soundtrack. With no Hans Zimmer, Dune does not hit. I promise you. I don't care how cool the desert people coming out the damn sand works. And that was my favorite thing. I would watch that scene over and over again. I loved watching people pop out of the sand. Coolest thing ever. I want you to try to dig yourself, bury yourself in sand and try to pop out. We're talking about insane athletic ability here, guys. I am an athlete. We're talking about insane athletic ability to pop out of the sand with your entire body and then go and fight. Most of you, number one, wouldn't get your forearms out of the sand, much less completely come out of the sand and then go forward and fight. None of us are doing that. So we're like in a completely different world of understanding athletic ability. But I say that to say, like, I don't really know what people think dialogue is. Are y'all shook? Are y'all scared? If you have great dialogue, no one's going to walk away saying, we could have done with a little less. You didn't have to say all of that. You know what I'd rather? I'd rather Zendaya not speak. Like, no one's saying that, because if she's saying bars, then we got it. So that's why I kind of tweeted playfully. I'm like, no, great dialogue is always going to be great. And if you don't think it's great, then sure, leave it out. But, and guys, if you have a movie that you're like, I could have done without this, I would have rather just been silent, the actors go, then I hear you. But, like, you're probably not going to come up with anything, because great dialogue is fine. And then on the flip side, you have the Shogun producer saying that, oh, this is more like Succession and, sorry, I don't mean to make fun of him like this, but honestly, whatever. This is more like Succession and House of Cards because where, dialogue and the storytelling and behind the words and stuff, and like words matter. What do you say? Words can be just as harmful as it. We understand. Okay. I don't know what y'all's problem is with Game of Thrones comparisons. This is the first time I've compared anything to Game of Thrones. It's a very difficult show to compare anything to because it changed the entire landscape of television in general. Do y'all think Game of Thrones didn't have the craziest of bars known to man? What are we talking about? Game of Thrones is 100,000% beautiful dialogue, especially in seasons 1 through 3. What are you talking about? Yes, we got the red wedding with the knife cutting and all of that, and the killing of this and the splashing of the blood, but that worked because of all the dialogue that we got moving forward. The dialogue in Game of Thrones is phenomenal. And quite frankly, I'm going to say it out loud, There's not one show that is seeing Succession with dialogue. Please be a serious person.
That's
There's
fact.
not one show. There's no show. There's not one show that I'm like, damn, you know what? This reminds me of Succession. It's just not happening. It's not happening. That entire show is dialogue. No one's like, oh my god, that set scene in that episode 3, that season 3, episode 2 of Succession. Beautiful. They traveled to Norway. They were rich. No one's doing away with the scene. It was all dialogue. So I don't want to hear this. Dialogue is fine if it's good. And if you can't write great dialogue, then just say that. Don't be sitting up here saying that we don't need dialogue. Dialogue is fine. I saw somebody's hands up, and I appreciate y'all, but I had to get that off my chest. Do y'all see how passionate? Like, I feel like we're losing the plot here a little bit when it comes to the aspects of filmmaking, my friends. David, what do you have to say?
So you jumped right into particularly my point, and one of the reasons, like I said, why I don't particularly like these movies. I wouldn't say I think it's wrong to say I don't like. I just find them very mediocre. They do nothing for me. I watch them in the initial, I'm like, and then after that, I really kind of forget about them. Um, and part of that reason is, like I said, because Denise kind of filled in the hole for me because of his dialogue. And when you say you don't like dialogue, that doesn't mean you don't want to do dialogue at all. But it does suggest that on a spectrum, you probably are going to put in less work on that aspect of the film than you would the others. And it shows, in my personal opinion. And it shows by some of the things you just mentioned. And since he said, well, dialogue is for television, I would then use film examples of exactly why you can, even in action, have dialogue heavy. One of my favorite action films, probably maybe my favorite action film ever, doesn't have a lot of action at all. And it's 1995's Heat. And to me, that movie is like 80, 70% dialogue. And then there's a giant scene that everyone remembers. And it kind of became the way in which I started to understand action, or my type of action, because I loved it so much. I learned action has to be supplemented by the fact of characterization, which either can come through your ability to repeat something even though you're not saying a lot, or either it's coming through dialogue, and which is a lot of times, whether Game of Thrones or Heat or Quentin Tarantino films, it informs us of who these characters are, what their motivations are, what their objectives are, and it does it not just in a superficial way, but in a very deep way, to where you can literally start writing whole entire think pieces on character by character through a Quentin Tarantino film, through Heat, through many of these other films, telling you about these characters because they're written so well. And to me, with Dune, the issue is that I just starting from the first one, and I think yes, it didn't. It kind of hurt that I read the book first, because there's a clear understanding there, and again, it's very dense and it's filled with a lot of words that tells you about who these people are. And even though there's a lot of dialogue in it, he's not saying much. And it doesn't really tell me much about who Timothy Chalamet's character is. It doesn't really say to me much about who Leto Atreides is. It doesn't really say much about the Fremen, which is even worse because this is ultimately the original book, and this is supposed to be a sort of a commentary on basically oppression. That's why at the very beginning of the first film, she starts to talk about who's going to be our next oppressors. And while Denis gives sort of the artifice of, oh well, I'm trying to create something very epic and large and make this commentary, when you actually pay attention, there's not that much going on that he has to say that's different than what anybody else could say. And part of that is because he's not particularly interested in the Fremen as developing them as characters beyond comic relief Stilgar, beyond the love interest Zendaya. There's not much. Her mother is the black woman that was in the first film was killed off in when the sandworm ate her.
Right.
And I don't remember. Saw it again recently, but I still don't remember if I heard a line that said that that's her mother. And on top of that, because there's no interest in her past, like there's an interest in his, because there's nothing about her that isn't really tied to Paul, then it to me it then informs on the rest. Because if she's the only Fremen person that really besides Stilgar that has a voice, and neither one of them is really getting characterized more so than they're being presented,
Right.
then what do I have to be to get enriched on? And the films, again, going back to my own personal taste of the action directors that got me, whether it be Walter Hill movies or Quentin Tarantino or Michael Mann and Ridley Scott. All of these people will like go back to Alien, go to Kingdom of Heaven, or any of these other epic giant gladiator films. It's dialogue rich, man, and you really get to know. Oh, this is who Commodus is, and
Right.
this is why he acts, and I can tell you politically how he moves and how that relates to how power moves in general. Whereas with this, I couldn't tell you much about it because it doesn't have that much interesting to say about how oppressors move. It reduces it to just the Bene Gesserit are bad women and how Conans are very evil men. But what specifically about them makes them who they are, or why they move in the particular way, or what's different about how they move as compared to how the Emperor moves,
Right.
and all this stuff, it's not interested in the same way that Game of Thrones is interested in Tywin or interested in how he moves
And
differently from Marjorie.
right. And it's interesting. I've obviously thoroughly enjoyed, but I respect your criticisms, and I expect when you share them on this spaces too, David. Because for me, and KP, I see your hand up. The number one reason, if I and I want you guys to think about this too as you walk away from this space. Think about the reasons why you didn't like a movie and categorize them. Like, is it acting? Is it dialogue? Is it sound? Is it the plot was trash? And the number one categorization for me not liking a film is I do not care what happened to the character. I hate when movies do not get me invested. So I don't know that I agree with you, David, that this was the movie that fit that, because I was very invested. I was like, when are we gonna turn Lisan Al Gaib up? Is he going to get to ride this worm? Oh my gosh, it's the biggest worm in the desert. Is he gonna like? I'm totally invested. To me, that's good. If you can make me laugh, right? You can make me cry. You can make me invested in the fact that I hope that your love succeeds. These are the things. So my criticisms of film come with kind of what you're saying, David. It's like, if I'm not committed and invested in the character, and you get me committed in a character by explaining these relationships and the consequences and ramifications and effects of these relationships failing or even getting better. And that's how you get me invested in somebody. A lot of movies to me are very throwaway movies because I'm like, I get that you want me to care what happens to them, but I do not care. I don't care. I watched The Beekeeper. I love Jason Statham. I think he's fantastic. Jason Statham. I think it was great. I, I think it was, when I say I think it was great, I think it was cool to see that. But Dune Part One and Two do a very great job of at least intriguing me to the point enough of being invested in what happens to these characters. I care what happens to Zendaya. You leave that scene with me, I'm like, oh my gosh, she's about to call a worm. Where is she going? Automatically a good move to me. I care. I care what happens to her. I care what happens to Timothy Chalamet's character. I care what happens to Josh Brolin's character. I care what happens to the Harkonnen. I want them to die. I think they're terrible people. Like, get me excited. If I want a villain to win and succeed, I think it'd also be a good movie. But maybe unless you actually want me to be like very confused or like Joffrey in Game of Thrones. You made me hate Ramsay in Game of Thrones. Like, these are the things I want to feel. Make me be invested in a character's fate, and that's all in the writing, right? KP, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, real quick. I love dialogue. This week I sat through 20 minutes on Instagram and half an hour on TV listening to The Rock speak. He made me more interested in a storyline than most movies did all year. And he spoke for an hour pretty much. So dialogue can make you like it or make it uninterested. But this movie specifically is what I wanted to feel when I watched Rebel Moon, and it did. And Rebel Moon did make me feel this, like invested into the characters and wanted to understand and
Mm-hmm.
like them or hate them or it. I just watched that movie and I was like, okay, that was cool. This made me want to cheer and hope and wish and pray, and I was locked in the movie. That you know, and that only comes to me in the theater. Like Dune One is the girlfriend that got away, and then you realize how good she was later. Dune Two is the girl that you get that got the mini skirt, and you're like, oh, she's fly, she's exciting, she's the shit. And then when you think about the first game, you're like, damn, I should have kept her.
Not
So
Dune 2 is the bad bitch that you just got for a little bit. Is she fun? But Dune 1 is the real relationship girly? Is that what you're telling me?
I'm just you, it just you understand when you get there. You
You're
understand when you get
telling
there.
me that Dune 1 is the girl you're trying to fuck Mary Kill the Dune trilogy? Is this what we're doing? Are we
I'm
doing
just
a
saying
fuck
I'm
Mary
just
Kill
saying
of the
Dune
Dune
three
trilogy?
Dune 3 didn't come out yet, so I don't know what Aaliyah's gonna do. I didn't read the books. I don't know nothing about Aaliyah. I mean,
But so far, you'd fuck Dune 2, but you'd marry Dune 1? This is crazy.
absolutely. Absolutely. It's too much drama in the LBC in Dune 2. It's too much drama in the LBC. So yeah, I love the movie. I recommend the movie in the theaters on this specific movie. I recommend it
I
a
feel the same
theater
way.
watch.
Dune
Because
1
if
is
you watch it at home, or if you watch it on your phone, or you watch it on a tablet, or you watch a download, or you watch, a janky promotions video, you're not
right.
gonna feel anything for it, and that's my biggest thing. My favorite scenes, real quick, is like you said, coming out the sand. That was awesome because I didn't know.
Obsessed.
I wasn't. That wasn't even a thought in my mind when they jumped out the sand. And I have jumped out of water like that as a kid, but not sand. Um,
You,
my
as a
other
kid, 45 years ago. Okay. All right.
see, but I have great memory.
Here's the thing, right? Oh, go ahead. Go
And then also, what's the guy? What's the white, the bright white guy? What's his name? Frey or Fry? What was his name? The
Yeah, friend. What's
yeah,
his
that
name?
scene reminded me
Austin
of
Butler's
Gladiator so much.
Austin Butler's character, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that scene. It reminded me of Gladiator, but it also reminded me of Game of Thrones because
Yes.
was it his adopted father was like, "Hey, we didn't drug them guys. I mean, that we didn't drug that. The other guys we drugged, but him, happy birthday, nigga,
Yes.
live or
See
die."
who you Here's the thing. Here's the thing. Let me give you an example of dialogue that works. There's not impressive dialogue. There's not like big words or like, but it hits. He puts the mother, the first ugly man. See, Tej kept asking me what I remember from Dune 1. I'm like, look, here's what I remember. There was a big fat ugly dude. I hope he dies. I don't know why he was like that. He was big and he was ugly and he was mean and he was evil. I hope he dies. That's all I remember. Then I remember a very pretty girl, and she was very pretty and very wonderful, and she's a badass in the desert. We got Zendaya. And I remember this one guy that lost his daddy and has a weird relationship with his mom. And then I mostly remember the Bene Gesserit, however you say it, and they really run shit. And I love to see a matriarchy that is somewhat kind of incestuous, but also like really powerful and evil, but also like almost tricksters. Like that's really cool. I think the Bene Gesserit as a character group are just the most fascinating characters, right? Because it's almost like we're in a matriarchy, but nobody knows it. So we're gonna let the patriarchy be, but like not really, because we actually run this and we control the whole bloodline. So I like that. But anyways, Hill to say, like, we get these moments where, he said, let's see let's see who you really are, nephew. That's a very basic line. But it turns you up, and it like we're watching this Gladiator, I like Gladiator Game of Thrones scene, and it matters because it's like, oh shit, you notice a few things in that moment. Number one, you called the risk of you risked your own nephew's life for the entertainment of millions of people. Number two, we've seen your whole family kind of looks crazy and is very like, y'all ain't got no skin color. Respectfully, if you ain't got no skin color, I'm so sorry. But you ain't got no skin color. You look like you do. Y'all are very violent people, just extremely violent. There's no real code around y'all except for we have to win and control spice. Like, very ruthless, barbaric people. But we get this one line where he puts a cigarette in his mouth. I'm like, that's great. That's great. We get that dialogue. Then we see Austin Butler's character look at Fry, whatever his name is, Frethen, whatever. And we see him look up at his uncle. And so there we go. Through dialogue, we've developed a relationship. We understand the relationship between the two characters. If you're new here, you know that that's his nephew now. We'd established in the scene prior to that this one man wasn't drugged, which means he is able to actively fight. And so I'm just like, dialogue absolutely matters. How else would I know that this was his nephew that he allowed to be drugged and all this stuff? Like, these things matter. These things are cool on this movie. And we need it at times. It works. If it's done well, it works every time. So, anyways, I wanted to quickly say that. I wanted to welcome Nem. Is Nem up? Nem, you wanted to speak? Because I want to talk about our favorite scenes. I had quite a few. I think it's really cool to create new worlds because you get to create new apparatus, you get to create new consequences for different things, and we all know that from a screenwriting perspective, the story is complete. Every scene mattered. We were introduced to the ability to jump out of the sand after the little kangaroo mouse came and was looking at the little antennas that stuck up from the uniforms, right? Then later on, he's like, why do we see this kangaroo mouse? Because he's cute. He's kind of doesn't fit in the movie. He comes clearer into the screen. We get this moment. And then later on, he's like, what are those kangaroo or what are those desert mice called? Like, what are those called? Ah, they're called muad'Dib, right? And everybody laughs. So these things, to me, great screenwriting, there's closed loops. We understand why every scene happened. We get like entire, it's not just because it looks good, right? This is not just a Villeneuve like, oh, it looks good. I think they did a very good job in Dune 2 because all of the scenes were foreshadowed, all of the scenes were tied in, it mattered, it made sense. But I want to let Nem speak. Go ahead. Welcome, Nem. Unmute. Nem. Nem, you're a speaker. Okay. Well, we'll let David speak. Go ahead.
Well, first of all, I just wanted the way y'all
David,
just walked by. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
can everyone hear me? Am I the one? Am I the issue?
No, I can hear you. I
Okay,
hear you.
so we can't hear David or Nem. Can either of you hear David or Nem? Because I can't hear David and Nem.
I can hear
Hello.
everyone.
I haven't spoken.
I can
I'm
hear
speaking
David.
now. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, there you go, Nem. Go ahead, Nem.
I was just trying to get my headphones working.
There we go.
But yeah, but before that, I couldn't hear anything. So like, I think my something's wrong with my audio.
Can you hear us now?
Yeah, but yeah, out loud. Hold on. Okay, I think I hear you.
Go ahead, Nem.
Oh, see, I missed what you were even introducing. So,
Oh, we were just talking about the Dune too. Tell me how you feel.
oh no, I
I don't
haven't
need to
seen
cue
it.
you
I haven't
up.
seen it yet. I've just been listening in.
Oh, you haven't seen it yet. Did you see Dune Part 1?
Yeah, I saw that a while back.
Okay, cool. So David, go ahead.
Can you hear me now? Hello.
I can't hear David. Can anybody else hear David?
Yeah, I can hear him.
I can hear.
For some reason,
Yeah,
I
I can
can't. I'll
hear
be
him.
quiet. Go ahead, David.
Um, the Austin Butler, the way we just kind of walked past that is a little bit wild to me because he's by far, to me, the performance that stood out the most in this movie. I obviously have not really ever been a fan of Timothy Chalamet, and I probably like Zendaya's performance more if I felt as though she was given more as a character. And so the only person here that seemed to pop out as somebody who was going for something that was really indicative as to who they were was Austin Butler. And all of the because of that, because you're in service of the story in a very strong way, then sometimes you have to like do certain things to kind of push yourself out into to be seen. And I just felt as though Austin Butler really, out of so many characters, just provided this sense of a guy who you could tell what he was motivated by, what things pushed him. Everyone else is being so quiet and so subtle with their things. I think there were times where he was able to bring about subtlety, but he was also one of the few guys really giving you something tasty, whether it was licking a
David, can
knife.
you pop out and pop back in?
Yeah, sure.
Can anyone hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I can hear you.
Okay. David, can you? Okay. Sorry. Okay. Sorry. That's now there's sirens. Um, I totally missed what David was saying, and I feel terrible because like I can't hear him. What was he saying? What we watched? Can you give me a synopsis of what he was saying?
You back, David?
David. Hello. Perfect. Perfect. Finish what you were saying.
Basically, just that the little small things that Austin Butler
Okay.
was
Austin Butler's
doing.
performance. Yes.
Yes, because I was just saying that I really, for me, he was this one standout thing. There were very few things about this movie that I took with me, but one
Right.
of them was his
His
performance,
performance.
from licking the
I love
knife
that.
to, the sort of visceral menace that just emanated from him. That regardless of before he really even spoke, and it wasn't just the look, it was just the way that he walked, the way that he carried
Right.
himself, the way that he would look kind of through people, and just stuff, and this sort of psychopathic tilt that just kind of lived beneath his eyes. He was the only person in this movie that I was actually literally afraid of.
And
And
I want to expound upon that because I know you were speaking for a little bit, and I want to give people a chance real quick. But I thank you for bringing that up. What I thought was really cool about this film with Austin Butler is that a lot of times, and oftentimes, if not most of the time, we get a villain, right? Or we get a villain and some concepts of the villainy that enabled our villain to become that, right? And what I think was cool was that there was a build-up to Austin Butler's villainy. We didn't get Austin Butler in the first hour 15 of the movie because it was like, let's see who your opponents are now, the Harkonnen, right? But then we get that weird moment where it's like, oh, you guys are Harkonnen. Oh, that's pretty cool. What a cool reveal. So, but then we get Dave Bautista's character, who is so macho, right? We're so macho, but ain't nobody scared of you. You kind of weak, right? Then we get, the big guy in the floating balloon. I don't know what his name is. Please give me the cast name. It's too many. There's too many new characters for me. The universe is too vast.
Vladimir.
Vladimir, thank you. Vladimir is his name. So then you get Vladimir, and you're like, oh shit, Vladimir don't play. We gonna have another person in his family come up. So now we're like, okay, Dave Bautista's character, we're done. Now we get Vladimir. Okay, we're shook again because we're familiar with him from the first movie. Then he's like, you see him a little shook, right? Which is very important. We always love to see our villains a little shook. The villains has a moment where it's like, dang, we're actually losing this war to these weak ass people that don't even have the same type of army or resources, but they have what? The advantage of knowing the desert, which is always so cool to see. I don't know if a lot of y'all watched Prey. We had a beautiful space on it. Tap into the website. But there's that cool like idea that I love when they use in film, that because I'm more familiar with the environment and the landscape of where we're fighting, it's that home team advantage thing, that's why I can win, because I know how to use the resources around me better. And that was so much of this movie. The Fremen existed and succeeded because we are one with the desert. You and our shit. And so I think it was really cool to see that the build up to Austin Butler was like, oh, y'all thought that we sent y'all the big guns, but we haven't even like, we'll get someone that's for real about his shit. And then the beautiful performance, to your point, David, of Austin Butler to kind of show that, because how can you show me you're better when I see your people failed the last 2-3 times before you? So how do I know you're going to, like, you look scary, you act scary, but like let's see what's actually going to come of this. And so then we see him go, and now you killed one of the very easy spies that we're kind of invested in because she was friends with Chani. So you see Chani kind of believes in her and like and trusts her. So now we got her and she's dead. She's out of here. Austin Butler got her. Then it's like he's making progress. So I think that kind of storyline to me was exciting because it's like the stepping stools of the villain. Like we're gonna send our first guy. He should be able to win, but he maybe not. Then we're gonna send our second guy, which they really didn't technically send a second guy. They send Dave Bautista's characters twice. But like, you get what I'm saying? Like the levels of, and then we get Austin Butler, who we see through the full end of the film cooking, got his piece, got was able to stab Tim, spoiler alert, was able to stab him, and really just put up a great fight. So I really enjoyed that. Edwin, did you want to say something?
I wanted to add more on Austin Butler.
Yeah.
After the performance, I was like, I apologize. I wasn't familiar with your game
Right.
because it, I wasn't. I I was I was entertained actually by Elvis, even though like I rolled my eyes so hard when we saw the trailer, and it's like, oh, it's another biography, another musical. Is like oh brother, and it's like
Uh,
Baz Luhrmann. So me and my parents saw it, and I was like, you know what? I was actually entertained, but I was like, Austin Butler got to do like another role to like kind of get that Elvis suit off of him,
mm,
and he was able to do it with
incredible.
Dune Part Two because he was so visceral, so raw, so like, oh, like this guy's like different from the other Harkonnen. Like
Mm,
he's definitely the type that that killed cats in the backyard. So I was like, I'm not gonna fuck with him.
mm,
So it was interesting to see him and like Chalamet kind of like be mirrors in the final act. Is
yes.
like, and like there was a scene when Chalamet and Rebecca Ferguson talk, and is like, yeah, I found out that we're Harkonnen through because Vladimir's your dad or your granddad, and
Sure.
so he's like, we have to become Harkonnen in order to survive and win this war.
And guess what
So
that was? Dialogue.
yeah, yeah, definitely, and seeing like Chalamet, Zendaya, this was a Florence Pugh performance that usually was pretty tamed from her other work, but it is like just seeing like the next generation of Hollywood stars that we're gonna see for like 20 plus years. Like
First of
I'm looking
thank you
forward to like what Zendaya does with Challengers this April,
so much for bringing up Florence Pugh. How dare we? I'd be remiss
and like I'm a Florence Pugh fan. Like Little Women, I was like that
not
movie is
bring
like
up Florence Pugh's performance until an hour and a half into this space. I'm so sorry.
it's
Thank you.
cool. But it's
Um,
like just seeing like this is
yes,
the next generation of stars we're gonna have. It is kind of cool to see. I understand like the landscape of Hollywood is so up in the air, sadly, but it is like
we're
we're
gonna keep.
still gonna get these people in our lives, and it's gonna be so cool.
Florence showed you how powerful dialogue can be and how, with good dialogue and a fantastic actor, we can move the story forward. We can understand the consequences. We can get those moments of like understanding the gravity of what's occurring, right? That was Florence Pugh's character. And I think all we did when we saw her was she just spoke. She just spoke and looked at the camera, looked at someone in the camera, like looked at someone, looked at another character. That's all she did. And she was a powerhouse, number one, because she's great at what she does. But number two, because what she was saying was helping us understand what was happening in real time as the audience member. She reflected who we were as the audience. Wait, so was I trained to be this the whole time? That's what Florence, that's her in realization at the same time as us. Like, oh, I was always going to be his wifey. That's why I'm so important. Oh, I've always been the best pupil. And so I loved Florence. I mean, everyone really had um, the best performances. I really think the weakest performance was Timothy. And I don't even think it was weak. I just think he's up against a lot of people that bodied their roles. I never once was taken out of the film except for when there was like a moment where Timothy was, where Chalamet, let's just say Chalamet, I don't know how to pronounce it. Chalamet, he did a stance in like right before the fight or something, and the sun comes up, and it's like this really dramatic thing, but like he wasn't standing sturdy to me. And I know it sounds crazy, but like y'all know, based on body language and like human understanding psychology and like how a person with confidence and the ability to like lead a people and win fights, in the most gruesome, difficult, challenging fights. Like we see how boxers stand before a fight. We see how UFC fighters stand before a fight. We see how athletes stand before they're going into a championship. And so I'm like, I know like what that looks like, and he took me out of it a little bit because I was like, he not standing right here, and his face and his neck and his muscles are not giving me like everyone is like you are, Muad'Dib Usul like it. So I'm a, Becca Ferguson, Florence Pugh, Zendaya, Josh Brolin, Dave Bautista, like they just Austin Butler, they just did a phenomenal job the entire time. And I think Timothy did the worst job. Again, I think he did great because he only took me out once. And I think he did fantastic. And I think the way that he was looking at Zendaya got me into their characters and their romance. But honestly, like, yeah, and I thank you for bringing up Florence Pugh because I think she did fantastic. She was also mostly covered the entire time, and it was her body language and the way she like had her eyes and her moved her mouth that made us kind of understand and really be in there with her acting because she's been in so many stuff. How do we know she's not? How do we can we take her out of the Midsummer? Can we take her out of the Hawkeye? Was it Hawkeye? Which one was she in? Not Hawkeye. It
It
was the
was
other.
Hawkeye,
It was
and
Hawkeye. Thank you.
I think
Like how do we take her out of these characters? And she really she really dove into it. So I want to wrap the space up by asking your favorite performance and your favorite scene. So which person really was like you really him or you really her, and then your favorite scene in the 3 hour blockbuster. What we watch, we'll start with you because you haven't spoken. Have you seen it? My lovely co.
Of course I
Okay,
have.
period. Give me your favorite scene and your favorite performance.
Um, hmm. Favorite performance. I honestly really loved Stilgar.
Okay.
He was giving.
Beautiful.
And that he is him. And then I would say favorite scene is when the sandworms were coming out and everybody was coming out of the sand.
Oh,
Yes.
I mean, it's giving Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Like,
It's giving turn up, y'all are all gonna
it's
die.
giving it's giving what needs to be gave. Okay, so we've got and I forgot Christopher Walken was in this movie too. He did fantastic. Okay, so we've got Javier Bardem, and we've got the takeover. Everybody finna die, Zendaya finna cook scene. Okay, Nem, what was? Oh, Nem and Bruce have not seen it. So Edwin, go ahead.
my favorite performance was Rebecca Ferguson's. I feel like this was like her statement, like "I'm here" type of performance. From the moment she like drinks the water of life, she immediately like changes. Like
Yes.
when there's a part where she's talking to her daughter when she's pregnant, and she's like discussing the plan, and she sees like the Fremen family, like a mother and kids, and she's like talking to herself, and she's like, we have to convert the weak to be believers in order to have like to be sure like Paul gets his role as the Messiah, and like the camera lingers on her face, and it was like super terrifying, just as terrifying as the as Austin Butler's
Yeah.
performance. It just because it's like oh my god, like this person has immediately did a 180, and she's like really effective. Like she changed her voice at necessary times, and
Oh,
she's become like so cold. So I feel like this is like her big like this, like I'm done with the Mission Impossible franchise. Like give me more roles. It was like I'm here. So I was like I'm looking forward to her career, her next move. And my favorite scene as leading up to when after Paul drinks the water of life, the shot of him like going through the Fremen tribe and like the overhead shot, and then Hans Zimmer's score. I looked up the song; it's called "Arrival," and it's just like the cello just dragging as he's about to deliver his speech, and
yes.
he's just his monologue of like things are changing now. Is like you're all afraid of me. You can't go against me. And then it's like that's the moment like when people should realize like Paul is not a hero or a good guy. It was like now is like things are like getting worse. Like and he's gonna take the Messiah role, which he begged not to take, but now he's doing it, and is like this is like I feel like this is like Chalamet's also like I'm here performance. Like I'm gonna be the guy for like the next 15 years, and like that what the end of the scene like when Stilgar asks like he's like tears of joy. He asks him is like what do you see in the future, and Chalamet says like green paradise, and his like tears are like rolling down his face, and I
Yep.
was like this is like so good. That
Yeah.
was like my favorite scene. Like if once like there's better quality on YouTube, I'm gonna be watching that on my TV for like a lot of times.
Love that, David.
Uh, even though even when I left the movie, I was very tempted to name Rebecca Ferguson because I just continue to be amazed by her. But the thing is, I was already expecting that. I started respecting Rebecca Ferguson's game when I saw Doctor Sleep, and that was enough for me. So by that time, and I actually think her work in Mission Impossible didn't have to be good, but she's extremely good in those films. And so by that time, she was already solidified for me. But Austin Butler, I forget who originally mentioned that, but I too was in that state of like, okay, I really, really thought Elvis was a case of possession. I think it was that good of a performance. It was one of the few times that I feel like it isn't as good as Jamie Foxx's, but it's that same level to me of like, okay, you really understood the spirit of this long dead person. But
Mm.
the point being that what Austin Butler did here solidified it for me. It was completely different. It was on a totally different realm. And it also wasn't just the menace. There were moments that I thought the most difficult moment that kind of sealed it for me was when the Bene Gesserit woman comes up and approaches him. And what he has to give us without giving in or saying anything is that those very things that she's saying about him, about what his weaknesses are, he has to give that to us without really showing it and letting it be small and subtle enough that we can detect it. And he does it like I forget exactly the moment. There's this moment when she says something to him. Right, that moment, his face, that whole time that he's been so menacing and such a like this facade, it drops and he looks weak like a child for that moment because she's dipped into that space of what he actually is into, like sexually. And so I just thought, like, yeah, now I was already sure with the Menace, but this is what really sold it for me that he really was doing something otherworldly.
Yes. Who
And
was the woman that played the Bene Gesserit in that moment?
that was Lisa Seydoux, who was also in the last James Bond, last couple, I want to say.
Lisa Do. Okay. Okay. I need to look her up. I really liked her performance. She was very short, but she did her thing in that part of the movie. I like that.
And then my
Um,
favorite scene
mhm.
was the everything that took place from the point where Zendaya's character, Tani, shoots that missile launcher and it knocks a guy right into the machine, and then ends with like Timothy Chalamet and Zendaya kind of running, and Denis took the camera back and he gives us a wide shot of both of them running under the shadow of that freaking cropper
Yes,
machine.
I just got
And then
chills.
there's the
Yes.
free falling helicopter on fire that just hits right while they're running. And I just like, oh yeah, this right here is one of the few scenes where I'm feeling like this is why you go to the movies.
This is cinema.
Yes.
Okay, that you get it. Okay, so for mine, I obviously, I'm the host. This is what we watch. Thank you for coming to talk Dune 2. We might need to have another chat. We're definitely going to talk Dune 3 when it comes out for the trilogy. But mine, okay, so I walked away and I was like, oh my God, y'all really try to disrespect my girl Zendaya, and y'all were wrong this whole time. I remember very vividly, and it's an acute memory of mine, in which people started talking shit about Zendaya. Maybe a couple of you in this room that was talking shit about Zendaya, and I'm like, she's that girl. But then as I was saying it, I was walking away, and I was like, actually, Rebecca Ferguson kind of ate everyone up. Because to me, and I have a lot of conversations around character transformations, I feel like people require that in film, and I'm like, there's actually something beautiful and very challenging to do in a story to make a character not even change and to keep them like to continue to like go through different things and have different consequences, but to continue to have that character not really transform at any time. But Rebecca Ferguson's character was first, I don't want to do this, I'm gonna do this, and like the voice and the body language and the wardrobe, everything was different. And then you get this completely different woman. Then you get this pregnant woman that's talking to her child versus the one that's talking to her son. And at times she wants to manipulate her son. At times she's good with her son. And then you see how she just looks at Chani with disgust, how she manipulates that as well. And so I was really like, Rebecca Ferguson is really her. And I hope to see her in even more specific lead roles and maybe leading a film, because she's very, 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 very good. She's a very talented actress. So I don't know. I walked away, and again, I loved Javier Bardem. I think my favorite scene was the most exciting one that I can remember. The first exciting one I can remember is the one that David mentioned, where we get, and because it went from like, it went really quickly. Like Zendaya's character Chani went to help the Muad'Dib very quickly. Like it kind of happened fast. It's like, oh, you need to pass these tests, and it felt a little rushed for a moment. But then we paused and we got that moment where they're running through the shadows, and she's a whatever she is, the freaking missile launcher, like, and then he's just like being this athletic person, and you're just in this moment with them. That was the first one. But honestly, I think what I really appreciate in these like already kind of sci-fi adventure difficult movies and blockbusters to create and like get people engaged, because really everyone's just engaged from the marketing and like movie star perspective, is the comedic relief. And when I tell you, I cried laughing every time we panned to Javier Bardem's face, and below it was like, as written. And I screamed every time. I thought it was hilarious because everything that he did, no matter what it was written. And I'm like, that is my favorite part of this movie. As written. I'm like, this man could shit on a fucking dune worm attack, like worm calling things, and y'all would be like, as written. It said it in the legacy. It said it in the prophecy. And I was just like, this is a really good time. Way to place these moments of as written, especially when they're just like so dark. Like there was a one when he was like, yes, of course, she was trained as a Bene Gesserit to do this. She was trained as a witch to do the transmutation when she's poisoned. It doesn't even matter. And then he was like, as written. He's so modest. And I was like, this is great, guys. I'm having a great time with the as written scenes of this film. So thank you guys so much for joining. That was Dune Part 2 with what we watched. Thank you to my esteemed co-host. And tap in. I had fun on the video. Let me know how you feel about video. And stay tuned. We have our film festival announcement coming up. Meet the Community, our first annual, our inaugural one. Our inaugural one last year was amazing in January. This one is coming up soon. Trust me, you want to be there. It's going to be amazing. Tap into whatwewatch.net and stay tuned for all of our upcoming spaces. Next week, it's Shogun, which is our new Game of Thrones, or I guess to him, Succession and House of Cards, but it's not. It's Game of Thrones, and it's okay. It's fine, but it's great and it's its own. It's not actually Game of Thrones. But anyways, that was Dune Part 2. We love dialogue. We love cinematography. We love the wide angles. We love the storytelling and the universe that's created. And please, 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 for Dune 3, we hope that the people that we want to be triumphant are triumphant in controlling the spice. That's Dune Part 2 and what we watch. Thank you.